Which Star Trek finale was worse, the original series or Enterprise? For a franchise built on boldly going where no one has gone before, Star Trek has often struggled when it comes time to say goodbye. Finales are notoriously difficult to land, especially in a sci-fi universe as sprawling and layered as Trek. Among the many series endings over the decades, two stand out not for their excellence, but for the polarizing, even frustrating experiences they delivered. Star Trek, the original series' Turnabout Intruder, and Star Trek, Enterprise's These Are the Voyages. Both finales left fans unsatisfied, and each for very different reasons. But if we're asking which one was worse, the debate becomes a fascinating study of creative missteps, missed opportunities, and how not to wrap up a beloved series. Let's break it down. Turnabout Intruder, a finale that wasn't meant to be one. Airing on June 3, 1969, Turnabout Intruder is infamous in Star Trek lore. Not just for being the final episode of the original series TOS, but for ending the series on such an awkward, regressive, and out-of-touch note. The episode centers on Dr. Janice Lester, an embittered former lover of Captain Kirk who forcibly swaps bodies with him to seize command of the Enterprise. Her primary motivation? Starfleet didn't allow women to be starship captains, according to her. She uses an alien device to take over Kirk's body and attempts to run the ship as him, while the real Kirk, trapped in her body, tries to stop her. The concept of a body swap episode isn't inherently bad. Trek has always toyed with identity and mind-bending sci-fi plots. But this one is bogged down by outdated gender politics and ham-fisted melodrama. William Shatner's performance as Lester and Kirk veers into parody, while Sandra Smith as Kirk and Lester delivers a restrained performance that makes the body swap feel uneven. And worst of all, it wasn't even written as a finale. At the time, TOS had already been canceled, and the writers had no chance to create a proper send-off. Turnabout Intruder ends with the body swap reversed, Lester being taken into custody, and Kirk offering a flat statement about how she was a woman who wanted too much. That's it. No reflection, no resolution, no final voyage for the original crew. Just an abrupt stop to a show that changed television. These Are the Voyages, an ending that betrayed its own series. On the other hand, Star Trek, Enterprise's finale, These Are the Voyages, aired on May 13, 2005, and was marketed as a Valentine to the fans. In truth, it was anything but. What could have been a character-driven capstone for the prequel series turned into a jarring crossover sideshow. Rather than letting Enterprise end on its own terms, the episode awkwardly framed the story as a holodeck simulation being observed by Commander Riker during the events of the Next Generations, the Pegasus. This choice effectively demoted the Enterprise cast to supporting players in their own finale. It took place 6 years after the penultimate episode, skipping over key developments and relegating important character growth to exposition. Worse still, the finale unceremoniously killed off Commander Trip Tucker, one of the most beloved characters, during a completely avoidable, half-baked hostage situation. The death felt forced, unnecessary, and emotionally empty. There was no weight, no grand sacrifice. Just a shoehorned tragedy to manufacture drama. To make matters worse, Captain Archer's speech at the founding of the Federation, arguably the entire point of the prequel series, was cut off before it began, leaving fans hanging on what should have been the culmination of 4 seasons of world building. In trying to bridge Enterprise to the wider Trek canon, the finale alienated its own core audience. Instead of celebrating the crew's journey, it told fans their story didn't matter unless viewed through the lens of TNG. The decision to prioritize nostalgia over narrative closure was a misfire that still stings. Comparing the failures, apples and rotten apples, to determine which finale is worse, we need to examine a few key aspects. 1. Respect for the characters. TOS, Turnabout Intruder, arguably disrespects Captain Kirk by turning him into a shrieking caricature in his own body and ends with a weak message about a woman being denied power due to her gender. The rest of the crew is largely passive. There's no real exploration of their arcs. Enterprise, These Are the Voyages, completely sidelines its lead characters in favor of a Next Generation cameo. Trip's death is the ultimate insult, coming out of nowhere and robbing him of a meaningful farewell. Topple, Archer, Hoshi, and Mayweather are barely given a moment of reflection. Verdict: Enterprise fares worse. While TOS failed to elevate its characters, Enterprise actively undermined them. 2. Narrative closure. TOS, as a product of 1960s television, the original series didn't emphasize serialized storytelling. Every episode was relatively standalone, and thus fans didn't expect a traditional finale. Still, it ends abruptly and awkwardly with no sense of goodbye. Enterprise. The entire series was building toward the birth of the Federation. That should have been the final triumph. Instead, we're robbed of Archer's speech and given a disconnected framing device that skips important moments. The closure is almost non-existent. Verdict: Enterprise again drops the ball harder. At least TOS had the excuse of not knowing it was ending. 3. Legacy and fan reaction. TOS, while Turnabout Intruder is widely regarded as one of the weakest episodes, it hasn't tainted the legacy of the original cast. The movies eventually gave them a much more satisfying send-off, particularly in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Enterprise, These Are the Voyages, is often cited as a primary reason why fans were glad the show ended. It poisoned the legacy of Enterprise, and many fans still skip the episode entirely when rewatching the series. Its flaws were so glaring that showrunner Manny Coto himself admitted disappointment. Verdict: Enterprise's finale actively damaged the series' legacy in a way Turnabout Intruder did not. 4. Thematic message. TOS. The episode's theme is deeply problematic, equating a woman's ambition with mental instability, implying that women can't handle power. It's an uncomfortable relic of its time, and even then, it felt regressive. Enterprise. The theme is muddled. Is it about honoring history? About learning from the past? Riker's dilemma is resolved, but the Enterprise crew story is diluted in the process. There's no clear takeaway. Verdict: TOS suffers from dated, sexist themes, but Enterprise suffers from thematic confusion and irrelevance. The verdict: Enterprise is worse, and it had no excuse. While Turnabout Intruder is a painful watch with a cringeworthy premise and zero finale energy, it is somewhat forgivable as a product of its era. It was the end of a canceled show, written without knowledge it would be the final hour. That doesn't excuse the sexism, but it does soften the blow of a non-finale. These Are the Voyages, on the other hand, had every opportunity to stick the landing. The writers knew it was the end. They had a cast that had grown into their roles, a story that had matured, and 4 years of narrative to pay off. Instead, they chose to make the finale about another series entirely. It was disrespectful, poorly structured, and left a sour taste in the mouths of both fans and the cast themselves. It's not just that Enterprise's finale was bad, it was a betrayal. And that's something fans are far less likely to forgive. Final thoughts. Saying goodbye should never feel like this. The end of a Star Trek series should be a celebration, a voyage completed, a legacy forged. The Next Generation got it right with All Good Things. Deep Space Nine earned tears with What You Leave Behind. Even Voyager's Endgame, for all its flaws, gave its crew closure. In contrast, both TOS and Enterprise ended with a thud. One with a sexist trope and no sense of finality. The other with a